Good evening, everyone. My name's Ollie Graysbrook. I'm coming to you this evening from CRCC Asia's office here in Philadelphia. As you know, we've been running a series of webinars on each of our program locations. So you may have already caught our webinars on Shanghai, Beijing and Shenzhen, Tokyo and Ho Chi Minh City. And we've got webinars on Seoul and Osaka coming up. But tonight I'm going to be talking to you about our program in Manchester. So if you bear with me for a second, I'm just going to share my screen. Great, so thank you very much all for joining me today. I'm going to start with a more general introduction on why you should intern abroad, before talking more specifically about everything Manchester has to offer, and then finally taking you through everything that's included in our program. And for those who listen all the way until the end, there will be a promotion code that will entitle you to a $300 discount if you apply for the Manchester program this week. So starting with why intern abroad, there'll no doubt be lots of opportunities for you guys to intern in your hometowns. Why should you travel halfway around the world for an internship? Well, the first reason is that it looks great on your CV. Job applications aren't much fun. You're going to be up against a load of young people who have got the same sorts of qualifications as you. Maybe they went to the same sorts of universities. And employers now expect to see some kind of relevant work experience. Just having work experience on its own is not going to be enough to stand out. But the fact that you've shown the initiative or made the effort to get an international placement is really going to stand out, especially in today's increasingly globalized economy. And you're just going to have a load more to talk about in your interviews than maybe the kid who's followed his parents' friend around an office for 2 weeks. As I'm going to go on to explain, our program includes the internship. You'll have lots of stuff to talk about from your internship, but it's a whole international package. So you'll also be able to talk about all these interesting international experiences you've had. The second reason is that you can really think of our programs as essentially a guilt-free vacation. I remember when I was at uni having all these long summer breaks and wanting to spend them traveling around the world, but feeling that I had to stay at home and get work experience and work on my CV. With an international internship, you get the chance to build up your resume, but to have fun while you're doing it. So you'll be starting the program at the same time as a group of other similarly minded young people. So be able to meet people your own age from all around the world. We don't just recruit from the US, we recruit from everywhere. And you'll be working hard during the week, but you'll be able to spend your weekends exploring a really amazing country. And yeah, so I'm not completely impartial when I say it's an amazing country. The more observant of you may have noticed that I'm not a native to the United States. But hopefully by the end of this, I will have persuaded you that the UK and Manchester in particular is an amazing place to visit. Next, you shouldn't just think of this as an opportunity to develop professional skills for your resume, but also as an opportunity for personal growth. So traveling to a new country and adapting to a different culture, especially a different professional culture, may take you out of your comfort zone, but you're going to learn a lot about yourself at the same time. And some of you may be thinking that the UK is pretty much the same as the States, so maybe it's actually not much of a culture shift. Trust me, as a Brit who moved to the States a few months ago, there are major differences and you will have to adapt. I found, for example, a lot of the stereotypes about the differences between British people and American people to be true. I suspect you'll find that English people are much more reserved than maybe you're used to, and are also a lot more sarcastic. You'll have to adapt to that. Having said that, if you have watched any of our webinars, any of our previous webinars on China or Japan or Vietnam, and are hooked on the idea of an international internship, but are maybe concerned that Asia may be too much of a culture shock, then I would say that Manchester would be an easier starting point for the obvious reason that you don't have the language barrier. And maybe, who knows, you use this as a stepping stone, take the Manchester program this year and move on to one of the Asian programs next year. Moving on to why Manchester in particular. But before I talk about all the things Manchester has to offer, I'm quickly going to address why you should choose Manchester over London. You may have seen other companies offering internships in London. You may think, well, London's a bigger name for my CV, I should go there instead. Now, in the interest of full disclosure, I'm actually from London, and I think it's a great city. I think you should definitely visit it at the weekend if you go to Manchester. It's only a couple of hours on the train. But it's a very international city. So I think going there, you would not find it that different to going to, say, New York or Chicago or one of the big American cities. Manchester will give you a much more authentically English experience. And also the fact that not many of your peers are unlikely to have been there will mean that it will actually stand out more on your CV as a result. People in the north of England, and again, I say this as someone who's from the south of England, so I'm not biased. People from the north of England are generally much friendlier than people in London. So you'll receive a much warmer welcome in Manchester. Much like, I guess the equivalent stereotype in the States is that people from the Midwest are friendlier than in other regions. In England, it's that people from the north are friendlier than people from the south, and generally that is true. London's also much more expensive. Manchester is on average about 40% cheaper. I'm guessing most people watching this, you'll be in college, you'll be traveling on a budget, and that budget will go a lot further in Manchester than it would in London. As I said, it's supposed to be, a fun as well as an educational experience. So you want to be able to go out after work for a meal or some drinks without worrying that you're going to run out of cash. You also don't just have to take our word for it. A couple of years ago, Lonely Planet, the travel guide that I'm sure you're all familiar with, published a list of its top 10 destinations in the world and included Manchester in it. And that was the only UK destination that made it into the top 10. And yes, there are certain business sectors in London that might be stronger than Manchester. If you want to be a banker, for example, the City of London is the UK's financial centre. But as I'm going to go on to show you, there are other industries in which Manchester is just as strong, if not stronger, than London. The first of these is the creative sector. So Manchester's long been known as a creative hub in the UK. Some of the best British bands and British music have come out of Manchester. Names like the Smiths, New Order, Stone Roses, Oasis, more recently the 1975. And if any of you guys aren't familiar with them, I'm not sure if they've all made it across the pond. Trust me, you will be familiar with them within a few days of landing in Manchester, and you're in for a real treat. But Manchester's place as a creative centre was cemented about 10 years ago when the BBC moved its headquarters from London to Manchester. And as you're probably aware, BBC is the British public service broadcaster. So if you ever watched a British TV show like David Attenborough documentary, or the Great British Baking Show, or a drama like Sherlock, chances are it will have been a BBC show. So we've got lots of great creative placements available. For example, we've got placements in branding, or at some creative startups, in blogging and in podcasting. There's a whole load to choose from. So Manchester is the third biggest economy in the UK, or the third biggest city economy in the UK after London and Birmingham, but it's actually the fastest growing. So KPMG did a study a couple of years ago that placed Manchester in the top 30 most innovative cities in the world, and also in the top 30 for inbound investments. And that means there are lots of big name companies in the city, like Heineken, Google, Deloitte all have offices or headquarters here. But it's also a real hub for startups. And part of the reason being that, as I mentioned, it's a fair bit cheaper than London. So a good place to be if you're just starting out your business. And people often think that they should be getting internships at big name companies because it looks better on their CV. And while there may be some truth in that, often you'll actually have a much better experience in a startup because there are fewer people. So you'll be a more valuable resource, often get much more responsibility, and you'll feel like you're playing kind of a major part in something new and exciting. So again, we've got lots of great placements, some really exciting startups across various sectors. So we've got startups in the charity sector, we've got e-commerce businesses, fintech boutiques, food startups. Whatever industry you're interested in, the chances are there will be a startup in Manchester that we can place you in. Next is one for the sports fans out there. So Manchester is the football, or as I'm loath to call it, soccer capital of the UK. And unlike Philly, where I live now, where in football, at least, everyone supports the Eagles. Basketball, everyone supports the Sixers. In Manchester, the city is very much divided into a red half, which is Man United, and a blue half, which is Man City. And even if you've had no interest in football previously, as soon as you land in Manchester, you're going to be expected to pick your team. So I'm personally a Man United fan. Fans like myself hark back to the glory days of Eric Cantona and David Beckham, the 90s and early noughties, when we used to win the league every year. Unfortunately, in recent years, Man City have actually been the dominant club in the Premier League. We don't actually have placements at either of those two clubs. We've got a great placement at Oldham FC, which is a slightly smaller Manchester football club, as well as other various other sports-based placements. But even if you're not doing a sports placement, as you can see from this photo, one of the great social events that's organised by the CRCC Asia staff is a trip round the Old Trafford Stadium, which is the Man United Stadium. It's a really fun event. So even if you're not doing a sports placement, you still get a chance to soak up the football fever. And this one's another advantage of Manchester over London, because Manchester, although it's in the north of England, is bang in the centre of the UK. So it's a really great hub to see the rest of the country. As I mentioned, London's only a couple of hours to the south, but you've also got great cities like Liverpool right next door, or Edinburgh if you go north to Scotland. Or also in the north of England, there's an amazing city called Durham. May not be at the top of lots of people's agendas, but it's where I went to university. And I promise it's the most beautiful city in the UK. I highly recommend you all go there. If you like history, there's so much to see in the UK, including, you know, the famous sites that you'll have seen on TV, like Stonehenge or the Tower of London. But the history is really everywhere. An example I like to tell American people, if you go to Nottingham, which is a city pretty close to Manchester, again, I would guess under an hour on the train, you can go to the country's oldest pub, which is called the Old Trip to Jerusalem. It's where the knights used to stop off for a drink on their way to the Crusades. It's been there since 1189. So you can go there, go to this pub, have a drink at an establishment that is 600 years older than your country. And if that doesn't sell Manchester, I'm not sure what will. For those who are more into the outdoors than cities, the Peak District's right on your doorstep. So Peak District's one of the UK's national parks. And as you can see from the photo, it's home to some really incredible scenery and also some really beautiful quintessentially English villages. A lot of these villages haven't really changed all that much in the last couple of hundred years. So if you're into English period dramas, you can go to one of these villages and feel like you've gone back in time. So yeah, this is within an hour from Manchester, so you can go from buzzing metropolis to complete wilderness in the space of an hour. If you're willing to travel a little bit further, the Lake District is another national park a bit further north, which in my opinion is even more beautiful than the Peak District. Or those feeling really adventurous, you can make the trip all the way up to the Scottish Highlands. So I'm going to move on from Manchester and quickly run through what's included in the CRCC Asia programme. And these are standard inclusions, so these are across all of our programme locations. So as you can see from this slide, the internship itself is a key part of the experience, but it's just part of what you get from the CRCC Asia programme. So it can be hard enough to get yourself an internship, but when it's an international internship, you've got so many more things to consider, like getting safe accommodation, getting a visa, trying to find your way around a strange city and strange country. CRCC Asia handles all of these things, so you don't have to worry about them. This slide shows what's included in the program. I'm going to run through some of these in a bit more detail, but starting in the top left, you'll be guaranteed a placement in the sector of your choice. So we can't guarantee any specific companies, but if you get accepted onto the program, you'll 100% get an internship in one of the sectors you want to work in, and tailored to your preferences. So if you say you want to work in a startup rather than a big corporation, for example, these are the sort of preferences we take into account when placing you. Moving along to the right, you'll also get comprehensive pre-departure support. So that includes visa advice, so you'll feel fully prepared before you head out. You'll be in private accommodation. So this is an example of the Manchester accommodation. You'll have your own bedroom, but may have shared kind of living area with other people starting the program at the same time as you. All the shared spaces are people of the same gender. And as you can see, it's pretty nice accommodation. On the first day, you'll be picked up at the airport, so you don't have to worry about landing all jet lagged and groggy and having to find your way across the strange city. You're picked up in your group, which takes away some of that stress on the first day. And then you won't be thrown straight into your internship. You'll have an induction with the CRCC Asia staff on your first day. As you can see, it'll be with the rest of the people starting the program at the same time as you, so it's a great opportunity to get to know everyone. And they will talk you through what to expect from the program, any upcoming events, good places to visit in Manchester, places to eat, places to drink, any quirks of British culture that you need to bear in mind before spending time there. And then on the first day of the internship itself, the CRCC Asia staff will take you to your place of work and introduce you to your supervisor. So you don't have to worry about that on the first day. And then after that, you'll be able to make your own way on public transport. All of the placements are in convenient locations, so you don't need to worry about driving or anything like that. You'll be able to get to them all using public transport. Throughout the program, you'll have in-country support. And this is both in the form of our weekly events, and these are a mixture of social events like the Old Trafford trip that I mentioned earlier, and also kind of meals and drinks and things, but then also more business-oriented events. So we get in, for example, local business leaders to come and give you a talk, and then there'll be opportunities for networking. In the hopefully unlikely event that anything goes wrong, there's 24/7 emergency support. You'll have a hotline. You'll be able to reach a CRCC Asia member of staff at all times. Or for any less urgent problems, there are also drop-in sessions with the CRCC Asia staff. As well as the business and social events, we have community outreach events. Gives you an opportunity to give something back to the community that you'll be living in for 2 or 3 months. I'm aware this photo doesn't look like it's a community outreach event, but this was actually a sponsored hike for a local charity. Again, these events aren't compulsory, but they're a nice thing to do if you have time and you want to get involved. Very quickly running through the application process. This will differ depending on whether you're you're at one of our partner universities or not. If you are, you might have to apply through them. If you're not, then you'll just need to do our standard application form online. After we've received that, you'll then be booked in to have an advising call with one of our admissions advisors. That normally takes around half an hour. You'll talk through your application, why you want to go to Manchester, what sectors you've picked, the sorts of companies you want to go to. And then we will attempt to place you based on what you've told us. And as it says, there will be an opportunity for review. So if you realise after your call you said something you didn't quite mean, or you missed something really important, don't worry, it's not game over. You'll still have a chance to let the advisors know. The payment process is kind of linked to the placement process. So after your advising call, you'll have to, if you're accepted onto the program, you'll have to pay a $500 deposit to confirm your acceptance. But we don't actually start looking for a placement for you until you have paid your first installment, which is due 1 month after the acceptance fee. The first installment is 50% of the overall program fee. Obviously, it's a good idea to pay this as soon as possible, because then we'll have more time to look for a placement for you that suits all your preferences. As I think it said on the previous slide, you can expect to be placed and confirmed in a host company 3 to 5 weeks before you leave. And once you have been placed, the second half of the program fee is due. These are our sectors I'm sure you're familiar with. As I mentioned earlier, some sectors Manchester is particularly strong in are marketing, media, general business, green tech. I didn't mention earlier, but Manchester is another strong sector for Manchester. But there will be placements across all of these sectors. Here are some testimonies from students who have undertaken the Manchester programme. If you're interested, there are more